Okay, the next rig I'm going to go over real quick is, this is probably a little bit more for steelhead. You don't see a lot of people fly fishing, float fishing for salmon, but if you really want to hook up legit and you're not swinging streamers, float fishing is really the way to do it. Traditional tackle, they're going to float eggs and skein and they're going to have the most legitimate hookup. So you could float egg patterns or a leech or whatever if you really want to on a fly rod. And that's, short of stripping a streamer or swinging a streamer and having a real aggressive fish attack, float fishing is going to be the way to get the most consistent, non-foul hooked, non-flussed fish. So here's kind of the setup for that. And this is the same for salmon and steelhead. This is actually set up for steelhead, so my pound test, I don't know exactly what everything is, but you're gonna range from probably on salmon a 30-pound butt section to 25 to 20 pound. You're gonna step everything down a little bit for steelhead and depending on your conditions. But here's how it goes. So you're gonna have a floating line. I like to use, just any salmon steelhead oriented floating line is gonna be good. I use a Rio indicator, extreme indicator line, I believe. For mine, they're all gonna be pretty similar. Aggressive front tapers, but a good belly section for mending. So floating line, any floating line would really work, but the more specialized it is, the easier it's going to be to cast and mend. So they're always going to have a loop connection. So your butt section's going to be about a foot and a half long. The real only purpose of this first section is to have a thick line to connect to your floating line, and that's going to save some wear and tear on that loop-to-loop connection on your expensive fly line. So this butt section is pretty much just there to have a thick line that's not going to tear up your loop on your fly line. So I've got a foot and a half with a perfection loop that would loop onto my fly line to a blood knot down to what is going to be 6 to 8 feet probably, depending on how long of a rod you're using. You usually don't want to get too much longer than the length of your rod on the leader setup. So if you're using a foot on that butt section and you have a 10-foot rod, you're probably going to want to go maybe 8 feet here, 7 feet, but 6 to 8 feet. And this is the adjustable section with your bobber. So if the holes you're fishing, the runs you're floating range in depth by 6 feet, then you're going to want 6 feet of line here. If they vary by 10 feet, then maybe you want to have closer to 10 feet on this section. But this again, if this is for salmon, let's say if this butt section is 30-pound test or 35-pound test, then this adjustable section's probably anywhere from 18 to 25-pound test. This being steelhead, this is probably 15-pound test if I remember correctly. So I've got a blood knot connecting that, and here I've got, on this setup, I've got about 6 feet of this adjustable section. So as I go down to the bottom of this, I've got my, here's the real nuts and bolts of this rig. I've got my, this is a Blackbird, so I use the Blackbird swivels I explained earlier are the best barrel swivels to use for big anadromous fish. They also make the Phantom floats, and these are great fly fishing bobbers for steelhead and salmon. What they come with is the bobber, which is just this piece of plastic, and these 2 little rubber stoppers. And what you do is you when you're making your leader, you string these on, and the bobber just pops in to these sections, like so, and at the top, you would slide this on to the top end, and then that's secure. And then that allows you to easily slide the bobber up and down to change depths. And if, you know, for some reason you're at a deep hole and you don't want a bobber, you don't have enough leader line to get deep enough, you can just pop your bobber off, let those two rubber things hang low, add a little bit more shot, and you're good to go. But for float fishing, you would have your bobber in between these stops, adjusted to 1.5 to 2 times your depth above your first fly. So I usually go like 1.5. If I'm in 3 feet of water, I'm going to have 4.5 foot between this bobber and my first fly. So these bobbers require a weight to float upright in the water. So to do that, you want that weight pretty close to the tip of the bobber. The best way to do this, you can just attach your split shot directly to the line, but that's going to snag up, and you know, you'll lose your whole rig if that snags on something and you have to break it off. So the best way to do this is to attach a little tag line with that weight that makes your bobber float upright. So a single, I can't remember what size this is, but wherever you buy your bobber from, they'll tell you what it needs to float it. But a little nail knot with a tag end. There's videos out there on how to do this, but you essentially tie a nail knot over your leader line and pull it off your nail tool, and then now you have this tag line that can slide up and down your leader with your bobber, so that you can always keep this just a couple inches from the end of your bobber, so that your bobber is always floating upright. So that's a pretty good, and if this snags up, this tag, it'll pop off the tag if you don't tie a knot in it. I tie a knot in the end of the tag so that I'm not constantly having to put new weights on, and I tie mine just on a light line so that if this gets caught, it'll just break off real easy, and I can tie a new one on, but my leader is all good. As you can see, there's a lot that goes into this leader, so you really don't want to have to re-rig this too much on the water. So I go down from that to the end of my adjustable section, and I've got another blood knot, and for me, I was using mono up here, just cheap mono, because it's heavy pound test, you know, 20-pound test, maybe 15-pound test. It's expensive to go through a lot of that real thick fluorocarbon. If you have a bunch of funds and you want to use fluorocarbon through the whole rig, feel free. But you can run mono through all this part with the bobber. But at the end of that adjustable section, I've got probably 1.5 foot of fluoro attached to it with a blood knot. And so this is the start of my fluorocarbon. Again, 1 step down, so if this is 15 pound, I'm going 13, 12 pound fluoro. And then that ends at a barrel swivel. So again, one of the Blackbird barrel swivels at the end of this. Tiny, super strong barrel swivels. And that's basically the rig. From here, you're gonna have your, you know, along this length here and below your bobber, you're gonna spread out your BB shots, you know, little split shots between your bobber weight up here and this barrel swivel. You know, that couple feet or whatever you're gonna have, you're gonna put, you know, I'll probably have 3 to 5 BB shots on this length here, with the last one being just above the barrel swivel. And by spreading out that weight, and that's what's gonna, you know, that first shot is what floats your bobber, orients your bobber the right way. The shot going down, you know, evenly spread down this piece of tippet is what's gonna sink your fly. And by spreading it out, you're gonna get a nice vertical drift. If you put just your shot down at the end, your flies are not going to be right below your bobber, and you're going to get drag, and you're going to miss fish because of that, whether they refuse it or you miss the take. If you spread your, if you use 3 to 5 BB split shot down the length of this leader line here, your flies are going to float under your bobber, and you're gonna have good, clean, straight drifts, drift-free, drag-free drifts, and you're gonna see every little take on your bobber. So that's really the gist of this hook, this setup. From here, your last BB shot would be just above this barrel swivel. You're gonna do 2 feet or so, 1.5 feet, 2 feet to your first fly, and then a second fly potentially, usually off the bend of that hook, which I kind of already went over that process. So 2 feet to the first fly, and then another 2 feet to the second fly would be kind of your general rule of thumb. So that's that setup. So again, I kind of rambled through that. So I've got a butt section, 1.5 foot perfection loop to your floating fly line, just to protect the tip of the loop on your fly line. That goes to a blood knot, to my adjustable section for the bobber. This one's about 6 feet. It could be 6 to 10 feet, really, depending on the length of rod and how much adjustment you want in this rig. Before you tie anything on the end of that, you're going to thread on your bobber stops for this Phantom bobber. So I'll pull the bobber out of here. So we got our bobber stops here that hold our bobber in place but allow us to adjust it. Then I've got a tag end attached a lighter line tag end attached to the main leader with a nail knot, so that can slide up and down the leader as well, and that's got my weight that orients the bobber. So it's whatever gram weight your bobber is the amount of split shot you want to hang off of this tag, and keep that close to the bobber. And then that comes down to a blood knot again, and probably 1 foot to 2 foot of fluorocarbon, 1 step down in strength. And that's where I'm going to put my BB shot weights spread out evenly down to the barrel swivel, with my last BB shot weight being right above that barrel swivel. And then to the other end of the barrel swivel is going to be where you're going to attach your 1 or 2 fly rig. Or if you're in a non-flies only section, you could float skein or whatever off of here that you wanted. But that is the basic float setup that is widely used by guides on our main northern Michigan rivers. If they're float fishing with fly rods, that's going to be a real popular rig, but not one that you see explained a lot online. The big difference being this, probably the sliding weight on the leader to orient your bobber in the right direction.